On the night of March 15th, 1985, 10 men were hunted across Detroit's East Side. All adults, all connected to a single broken promise, all dead before sunrise. The killers were not gang members. They were not drug dealers or hired assassins from out of state. They were the Robinson family, a father and his 3 sons, former auto workers turned small business owners, church-going men who had never missed a Sunday service in 20 years, the kind of family that neighbors borrowed tools from, the kind that helped push your car out of the snow without being asked. Detroit police would later call it the most methodical killing spree in the city's history. 10 bodies scattered across 12 miles of urban decay, each one found in a different location, each one killed with the same cold precision. The reason behind the bloodshed was not drugs, was not territory, was not even money, at least not directly. It was a contract, a handshake agreement worth $47,000, and one family's belief that a man's word is the only currency that matters. What follows is not a story about criminals. It is a story about what happens when the system abandons working men, when desperation meets betrayal, and when a father decides that justice denied is justice, he must deliver himself. The Robinson family lived by a simple code. You honor your word, you protect your own, and when someone breaks both, you make them answer for it. If you have the courage to hear this story, leave your like and subscribe to this channel. But I warn you, this narrative contains extreme violence based on real events. Some of you will hate these men by the end. Others will understand them. And a few of you, the honest ones, will admit you might have done the same thing. Detroit's East Side in 1985 was a landscape of broken promises, block after block of boarded windows and abandoned houses. Streets that had once hummed with working families now sat empty, silent monuments to an industry that had packed up and left. The auto plants that built this neighborhood had been closing since the late 70s. By 85, unemployment on the East Side had climbed past 20%. Some blocks were closer to 40. Men who had spent their entire adult lives building transmissions and welding frames now stood in lines for government cheese. Their skills meant nothing. Their experience meant less. March in Detroit meant temperatures dropping to 23 degrees after dark. The air smelled like burning trash barrels, exhaust fumes, and something else, something harder to name. Desperation, maybe. The smell of a neighborhood slowly dying. At night, you could hear dogs barking in empty lots and the distant wail of sirens that never seemed to get closer. Police response on the East Side averaged 47 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes never. There was a machine shop on Gratiot Avenue, a small operation wedged between a check-cashing place and a building that used to be a grocery store. Keep that location in mind. It matters later. The owner had installed steel bars on every window and a reinforced door that took 3 different keys to open, not because of the neighborhood, because of what was coming. In this part of Detroit, the law was more rumor than reality. Patrol cars passed through but rarely stopped. Calls went unanswered. Reports went unfiled. And when a man got cheated, truly cheated, the kind that takes everything he learned fast that no one was coming to help. Justice on the East Side was whatever you could make with your own 2 hands. The Robinson family was about to prove just how much justice 4 men could deliver. Curtis Robinson was 53 years old that March, though he looked closer to 65, 6'1", 220 pounds of muscle that had started turning soft around the middle. His hands told his whole story, thick knuckles, oil stains that never fully washed out, a missing tip on his left ring finger from a press machine accident in 1971. Those hands had built engines for Chrysler for 19 years. Now they rebuilt alternators and starters in a shop he owned with his sons. He walked with a slight limp shrapnel from the Mekong Delta that still worked its way to the surface some winters. Curtis had served 2 tours in Vietnam with the Army's 25th Infantry Division. Came home with a Bronze Star he never displayed and nightmares he never discussed. The military taught him 2 things that stayed with him: how to plan an operation down to the minute, and how to kill a man without hesitation. He had hoped to never use either skill again. He married Lorraine in 1968. 37 years old now, though she carried herself like someone older. 17 years of marriage. 17 years of standing beside him through layoffs, strikes, and the collapse of everything they had built. She knew what her husband was capable of. She also knew what was coming, and God help her, she did not try to stop it. Curtis had 3 sons. Marcus, 29, the oldest, built like his father, quiet in a way that made people nervous. Darnell, 25, the middle child, quick-tempered, the one most likely to swing first and ask questions after. Andre, 19, the youngest, still soft around the edges, still believed there might be another way. That softness would cost him something before this was over. All three had worked the auto plants before the layoffs. All three now worked the family shop. All three would answer when their father called. What Curtis valued most was not money, was not property, was not even the business itself. It was his word. The belief that a man who breaks his promise is no man at all. And that a debt, a real debt, the kind sealed with a handshake, must be paid, one way or another. The men who owed that debt operated out of a parts distribution warehouse on the other side of Gratiot. Raymond Hollister ran the operation, 51 years old, former auto executive who had spotted opportunity in the wreckage of Detroit's collapse. He was not a monster, just a man who saw other men's desperation as a business advantage. Hollister had 9 partners and associates, 10 men total. Some handled logistics, some handled money, some just carried enough muscle to make problems disappear. They had done business with Curtis Robinson for 8 months, smiled at him, shook his hand, made promises they never intended to keep. Raymond Hollister did not know it yet, but every single one of them was already dead. They just had not stopped breathing. The contract had been simple. Robinson Auto Electric would supply rebuilt starters, alternators, and electrical components to Hollister Distribution, exclusive supplier for 18 months. In exchange, Curtis had invested everything, $47,000, his life savings, a second mortgage on the family home, every dollar he had scraped together since the Chrysler layoffs. The money bought new equipment, expanded inventory, and 3 additional employees. Hollister had promised volume, promised payment within 30 days of delivery, promised that this deal would save the Robinson family. For 8 months, it worked. Orders came in steady. Payments arrived on time. Curtis allowed himself to believe they had survived the collapse. Then February came. The orders stopped. Calls to Hollister's office went unanswered. When Curtis drove to the warehouse on February 19th, he found the loading bay empty. The secretary, a young woman who had always smiled at him, refused to meet his eyes. "Mr. Hollister is not available." "When will he be available?" "I couldn't say." Curtis stood in that lobby for 11 minutes, waiting for a man who was watching from an upstairs window. The next week, he learned the truth. Hollister had signed an exclusive deal with a supplier from Indiana. Cheaper parts, non-union labor. The Robinson contract was void, buried in fine print that Curtis had trusted a handshake to override. $47,000 in inventory sat in his shop. No buyer, no recourse. No way to make the mortgage payment due in 19 days. Curtis drove to the warehouse one more time. March 3rd. This time, Raymond Hollister was waiting in the parking lot. 2 of his associates stood near the door, the kind of men who communicated through posture rather than words. "Curtis." Hollister said it like they were old friends. "I figured you would come by. You owe me $47,000. I do not owe you anything. Read your contract. We had an agreement. You shook my hand." Hollister smiled. That smile would replay in Curtis's mind for the rest of his life. "A handshake is not a contract, Curtis. This is business, nothing personal. You are going to make this right." "Or what?" Hollister stepped closer. "You are going to call the police? Hire a lawyer with money you do not have? File a complaint that no one will read?" He shook his head. "Go home, Curtis. Take care of your family. This is over." Curtis did not move. "I am giving you until Friday, March 8th, 5 o'clock. Giving me what? A chance to make this right. Return what you owe. We forget this happened." Hollister laughed. Actually laughed. "Or what? You are going to come back here with your sons and do something stupid?" That dismissive tone, those words, Curtis would remember them when the time came. "I am giving you fair warning," Curtis said. "A man honors his debts, one way or another." He turned and walked to his truck, did not look back. Behind him, Hollister was still laughing. Curtis tried the law, filed a report at the precinct on March 4th. Officer took notes without looking up, said someone from the commercial fraud division would follow up. No one followed up. He called on March 6th. Different officer, same result. "These things take time, Mr. Robinson. Civil matter, probably need a lawyer." A lawyer cost money he did not have. The courts took months he could not afford. The bank had already started foreclosure proceedings. By March 7th, Curtis Robinson had stopped expecting help. The message was clear. No one was coming. No one was ever coming. Friday arrived. 5 o'clock passed. No call from Hollister. No payment. No acknowledgement that Curtis Robinson even existed. That night, Curtis called his sons to the kitchen. They gathered around the table where they had shared 1,000 meals, where Curtis had taught them to play cards, where he had told them their mother was pregnant with Andre 19 years ago. Now it would witness something else entirely. Lorraine stood in the doorway, arms crossed, face unreadable. They took everything, Curtis said. The business, the house, our future, silence. The law will not help. The courts will not help. Nobody is coming to save us. Marcus spoke first. What do you need from us? Hollister has 10 people in his operation. 10 men who looked me in the eye and lied. Curtis laid a piece of paper on the table. 10 names. 10 addresses. I am not asking you to do this. I am telling you what I am going to do. You can walk away. No judgment. Darnell leaned forward. When? Saturday night, March 15th. Andre, 19 years old, still young enough to believe in other options, asked the question no one else would. Is there another way, Pop? Curtis met his youngest son's eyes. There was. They chose not to take it. Lorraine stepped into the kitchen. She looked at her husband, at her sons, at the paper with 10 names that would change everything. She did not try to stop it. Some decisions you cannot stop. You can only witness. Once we do this, Curtis said, there is no going back. We will answer for it eventually. Prison. Maybe worse. He paused, but they answer first. One by one, his sons nodded. Marcus, Darnell. And finally, after a long silence, Andre. The decision was made. The preparation took 6 days. Curtis gathered weapons, his own 12-gauge pump shotgun. Marcus brought a .38 revolver he had owned since '79. Darnell carried a 9mm semi-automatic. Andre would use their father's backup piece, a .45 that had sat in a lockbox since Vietnam. Ammunition came from 4 different stores across 3 counties. Cash only. Never the same face twice. Curtis still had friends from the plant. One of them, a man who owed Curtis a favor from years back, provided 2 additional shotguns. No questions asked. No paperwork. In Detroit, such arrangements were not unusual. They studied the 10 targets. Curtis had already mapped their routines during weeks of broken promises and ignored phone calls. Hollister left his office at 6:15 every evening. His accountant worked late on Saturdays. The warehouse crew scattered to 3 different bars after shift. The pattern was sloppy, predictable. These men had never considered themselves prey. That was about to change. Curtis assigned positions using hand signals he had learned in the Mekong Delta 30 years ago. Military precision. No wasted movement. No room for error. Each son knew his targets. Each son knew the sequence. Each son understood there would be no second chances. By Friday, March 14th, everything was ready. 4 men, 6 weapons, 1 night to collect a debt that the law refused to acknowledge. Curtis looked at his sons that evening, boys he had raised to be honest, to work hard, to trust that the system would reward them. The system had failed. Now they would become something else entirely. 11:47 p.m. on March 15th, 1985. Temperature had dropped to 19 degrees. No moon. Cloud cover sat low over the east side like a burial shroud. Curtis sat in his pickup truck 2 blocks from Mickey's bar on Chalmers Avenue, engine off, headlights dark, watching 3 men through the window who had no idea they had less than an hour to live. His breath came slow and steady. He had expected his hands to shake. They did not. He had expected fear. Instead, there was only cold purpose, like he had stepped outside himself, like he was watching from somewhere far away back in the jungle, back in '68, when killing was just another task to complete before sunrise. Curtis picked up the shotgun from the seat beside him, opened the chamber, confirmed the round, closed it with a quiet click. 2 blocks east, Marcus waited in his own vehicle. 1 block north, Darnell. Andre sat in the passenger seat beside his father, silent, pale, hands trembling in a way Curtis chose not to acknowledge. The radio in Mickey's bar was playing Marvin Gaye. Curtis could hear it faintly through the winter air. Music for the dead. He raised his hand. The signal. Movement began. 12:03 a.m. The first 3 targets stepped out of Mickey's bar together. Wayne Dalton, Terrence Marsh, Dwayne Booker, warehouse workers. The men who had loaded Robinson inventory onto trucks for 8 months, then helped redirect it to the Indiana supplier when the deal collapsed. They were laughing about something, a joke one of them had told inside. The laughter stopped when Curtis and Marcus stepped out of the shadows. Wayne Dalton recognized Curtis first. "Robinson, what the hell are you?" The shotgun answered the question. Wayne dropped against the brick wall and did not get up. Terence Marsh tried to run, made it 6 steps before Marcus cut him down. Dwayne Booker raised his hands. Wait, I was just doing my job, man. I did not make those decisions. That was Hollister. That was—" "You knew," Curtis said. "I just loaded trucks." "You knew what he was doing. You watched him take everything from me, and you did nothing." Curtis remembered Hollister's words from the parking lot. "This is business. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal," Curtis said. The shotgun spoke again. 3 bodies in the alley behind Mickey's bar. The Marvin Gaye song was still playing inside. No one had heard a thing. 12:21 a.m. Leonard Price lived alone in a duplex on Heidelberg Street. He handled accounts receivable for Hollister Distribution. The man who had processed Curtis's invoices for 8 months, then stamped them void when the deal fell apart. Leonard was 54 years old, divorced twice, lived for his work because he had nothing else. He was watching a late movie when Darnell came through the back door. The lock gave way with barely a sound. Leonard turned from the television, saw Darnell's face, saw the 9mm. Understanding came slowly, confusion first, then recognition, then fear. "Please," Leonard said. "I have money, in the bedroom, maybe $2,000. Take it. Take whatever you want." "This is not about money." "Then what? What do you want?" "My father's $47,000 went through your desk. You stamped every invoice. You knew what was happening." Leonard's face went grey. I was following orders. Hollister told me." "Hollister is going to answer too. Right now, I am here for you." The television kept playing. Some old western. Cowboys and justice and a world where right and wrong were simple. Leonard Price was still trying to form words when the bullet ended the conversation. Darnell stood there, waited for guilt, horror, felt nothing but the cold satisfaction of a debt being paid. He left through the back door. The television kept playing to an empty room. 12:38 a.m. Jerome Whitfield was the 4th name on the list. Hollister's nephew, 29 years old. He had personally delivered the news to Curtis that the contract was void, had smiled while doing it. That smile had kept Curtis awake for 3 weeks. Marcus found Jerome in his apartment on Gratiot, half a mile from the machine shop Curtis had noted earlier. Keep that location in mind, he had told himself. Now he understood why. Jerome answered the door holding a beer. "Yeah? Who are you?" "Marcus Robinson." The name registered. Jerome tried to slam the door, too late. Marcus was already inside. "Listen, man, listen. That was business. Your father knew the risks. Nobody forced him. He trusted you." "Trust?" Jerome laughed, a nervous, desperate sound. "In this city? Your old man should have known better." Wrong words. The last words Jerome Whitfield ever spoke. Marcus thought about his father, about 19 years at Chrysler, about the savings account that took 2 decades to build and 2 months to destroy. The .38 revolver was louder than he expected. Jerome dropped. The beer bottle shattered on the floor. Marcus stepped over the body and walked back into the cold. 12:51 a.m. Andre was on his knees behind a dumpster on Sherwood Street, vomiting, his body rejecting what his mind had commanded. He had just helped his father with the 5th target, a man named George Keller, logistics coordinator, the one who had rerouted Robinson's shipments to the Indiana supplier. George had begged, had dropped to his knees in his own garage and begged for his life. "I have children, 3 kids. The youngest is only 6. Please, please, they need their father." Curtis had paused. Something flickered in his eyes. But the pause lasted only a moment. You should have thought about that before you helped steal from mine. Andre had watched his father pull the trigger, had watched a man who mentioned his children collapse onto the concrete floor. Now his stomach was empty, but kept trying to purge something that could not be expelled. The horror of what they were doing, the horror of what he was becoming. Curtis found him there. Andre? What did we do? His voice broke. Pop, what did we did what needed doing. Get up. I cannot do any more. You can, you will. 5 left, then it is over. Andre looked at his hands, shaking. These hands had helped his mother in the kitchen, had turned wrenches beside his brothers, had held a girl named Denise just last Sunday and talked about a future that no longer existed. Now they were a killer's hands. He stood, wiped his mouth. Something had died behind his eyes, something that would never come back. They moved to the next target, 1:17 a.m. William Tate was Hollister's attorney, the man who had drafted the contract with the fine print that made the handshake worthless. He lived in a nicer neighborhood than the others, Palmer Woods, a house that cost more than Curtis would earn in 10 lifetimes. William was 61 years old, had practiced law for 34 years, had built a career on finding loopholes that benefited men like Hollister at the expense of men like Curtis. He was working late in his home office when Darnell and Marcus came through the patio door. William looked up from his desk, saw the guns. His legal mind immediately began calculating. Gentlemen, whatever this is about, I am sure we can reach an arrangement. You wrote the contract, Marcus said. I write many contracts. The one that let Hollister steal $47,000 from Curtis Robinson. Recognition flickered. Then something else. Resignation, maybe. I see. William leaned back in his chair, 61 years old. He had always known this work would catch up to him eventually. He just thought it would be in a courtroom. For what it is worth, he said. I advised Raymond against that particular clause, told him it was too aggressive. He did not listen. But you still wrote it. I did. William Tate's last thought was not about the contract. It was about his daughter, her wedding, 18 months away. He had already paid for the venue. She would have to find another way to cover the flowers. The bullet ended everything, and William Tate stopped thinking at all. 1:44 a.m. 2 more names crossed off the list. Derek Simmons, Arthur Vance, both found at a card game in a basement on Mack Avenue, both dead within 90 seconds of each other. Arthur had tried to negotiate, offered $10,000, then 20, then everything in his bank account. Curtis had listened without expression. I would have taken $47,000 2 weeks ago, he said. Tonight, the price is different. Arthur Vance was still reaching for his wallet when the shotgun ended the negotiation. 8 down, 2 remaining, and the most important one was still out there. 2:11 a.m. Raymond Hollister's house sat on a quiet street in Grosse Pointe, just outside the Detroit city limits. A different world from the East Side. Clean streets, manicured lawns, the kind of neighborhood where men like Curtis Robinson were only welcome if they were making a delivery. Curtis stood in the shadows across the street. Marcus and Darnell flanked the back entrance. Andre waited in the truck. His father had not asked him to come inside, had seen something in the boy's eyes that said he had reached his limit. The lights were on in the upstairs bedroom. Raymond Hollister was awake. Maybe he had heard about the others by now. Maybe he was sitting up there wondering if he was next. Curtis crossed the lawn. The front door was locked. 3 deadbolts. Hollister had always been a careful man, not careful enough. Curtis went through the side window, glass scattered across the kitchen floor. He did not bother being quiet. Let him know death was coming. Let him feel what Curtis had felt for the past 3 weeks. The helplessness, the certainty that no one was coming to save him. Footsteps upstairs, a door slamming. Curtis climbed the stairs slowly. in no rush. He found Hollister in the master bedroom, backed against the far wall, holding a golf club like it might save him. 51 years old, former auto executive, the man who had smiled while destroying Curtis Robinson's life. He was not smiling now. "Curtis." Not a question, just acknowledgement. "You actually did it, all of them." All of them. Over $47,000. It was never about the money. Curtis stepped closer. Hollister raised the golf club. His hands were shaking. "Then what? What was it about? You looked at me like I was nothing." Curtis remembered the parking lot, the dismissive tone, the laugh. "You shook my hand, looked me in the eye, made promises you never intended to keep. That is how business works." "No." Curtis shook his head. "That is how men like you work. Taking from people who have nothing left, counting on them being too beaten down to fight back." Hollister's voice cracked. "I have a family, a wife, 2 daughters. I had a family too, had a business, had a future. You took all of it. I will give it back, every penny, more. I have money, Curtis, real money. Just let me—" "You had your chance. March 8th, 5 o'clock. You laughed at me." Hollister's face contorted, fear turning to something else. Anger. Defiance. "You think killing me changes anything? You think this makes you a man? You are nothing, Curtis. You were nothing before, and you will be nothing after. A broke, desperate—" The shotgun cut him off. Raymond Hollister fell against the bedroom wall, slid to the floor, still breathing, barely. Curtis stood over him. "You were wrong about one thing." Hollister's eyes were fading, blood spreading across the carpet. "I am not nothing. I am the man who made you answer for what you did." Curtis watched the light leave Raymond Hollister's eyes. The last name on the list. The debt was paid. 2:39 a.m. 10 men were dead. The worst killing spree in Detroit's modern history was over. Curtis walked back to his truck. His boots left prints in the frost, footprints that would lead investigators straight to this house, straight to him. Did not matter. He was not running. Marcus and Darnell emerged from the shadows, both silent, both changed forever. Andre sat in the passenger seat where Curtis had left him, staring at nothing. The boy, the man now, Curtis supposed, had not spoken in over an hour. Curtis climbed into the driver's seat. His hands finally shook. He looked at them. These hands had held his sons when they were born, had built engines for 19 years, had assembled a business from nothing, had held Lorraine on their wedding night. Now they were a killer's hands. Marcus climbed in beside him. "What now, Pop?" Curtis stared at the road ahead, at the darkness, at the rest of his life measured in days instead of years. "We go home, we clean up, we wait for them to come." He started the engine. 4 men who had crossed a line they could never uncross, carrying the weight of 10 dead, knowing they would carry it for the rest of their lives. The drive home took 23 minutes. Nobody spoke. There was nothing left to say. 6 hours after the last shot echoed through Raymond Hollister's bedroom, a woman named Patricia Givens discovered the first body. Patricia was 43 years old, night manager at a 24-hour laundromat on Chalmers Avenue. She had stepped outside for a cigarette at 8:47 a.m. and noticed something in the alley behind Mickey's bar. At first, she thought it was a pile of old clothes. Detroit's east side was full of discarded things. Then she saw the blood. Patricia's training as a former emergency room receptionist kicked in. Or maybe it did not. She stood frozen for nearly a full minute, unable to process what she was seeing. 3 bodies, arranged almost neatly against the brick wall, eyes open, frost forming on their skin. She dropped her cigarette and ran back inside. Her hands shook so badly she misdialed 911 twice before getting through. By 9:15, the first patrol car arrived. By 9:45, the body count had reached 3. By noon, it had climbed to 8. Detectives moved across the east side like men tracking a plague. Each crime scene led to another, each body connected to the last. Leonard Price in his duplex, television still playing, Jerome Whitfield in his apartment on Gratiot, beer soaking into the carpet beside him, George Keller in his garage, William Tate in Palmer Woods, Derek Simmons and Arthur Vance in that basement on Mack Avenue. Cards still spread across the table. By 2 p.m., the final 2 bodies were discovered. Raymond Hollister and his driver, a man named Samuel Cross, who had been waiting in the car outside. Marcus had handled Samuel. Quick, professional. The man never saw it coming. 10 dead. 12 hours. The city had not seen anything like it since the riots of '67. Detective Harold Washington arrived at the Hollister residence at 3:22 p.m. He was 56 years old, 29 years on the force, had seen overdoses and domestics and gang killings that turned his stomach. But walking through Raymond Hollister's house, stepping over shell casings and photographing blood spatter, he felt something shift in his chest. This was not rage, was not passion, was not the sloppy chaos of most murders. This was systematic, planned, executed with military precision. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, Washington told his partner. These were not crimes of opportunity. These were executions. The evidence came together over the next 48 hours. Shell casings from multiple weapons, 12 gauge, 38, 9mm, 45. Tire tracks matching a 1978 Ford pickup. And witnesses. So many witnesses. The bartender at Mickey's remembered seeing a truck circling the block 3 times before closing. A neighbor on Heidelberg Street reported hearing a back door splinter around midnight. A woman walking her dog in Palmer Woods saw 4 black men in a pickup truck at 2:15 a.m. Described the driver as older, grey at the temples, military posture. But the connection that broke the case came from Raymond Hollister's own secretary, Marlene Cobb. The young woman who had refused to meet Curtis Robinson's eyes 3 weeks earlier. She sat in the interview room at the 7th Precinct, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she had not touched. There was a man, she said. Curtis Robinson. He came by the office several times. Mr. Hollister owed him money, a lot of money. How much? $47,000, some kind of parts contract that fell through. Detective Washington leaned forward. Did Robinson threaten Mr. Hollister? Marlene hesitated. He gave him a deadline, said he had until March 8th to make it right. And what happened on March 8th? Nothing. Mr. Hollister laughed about it, said Robinson was too broke to hire a lawyer and too old to do anything else. Washington wrote the name in his notebook, drew a circle around it. Curtis Robinson. You have an address? Marlene did. The machine shop on Gratiot Avenue, the one with steel bars on every window, the one Curtis had fortified not because of the neighborhood, but because of what was coming. It all made sense now. On March 17th, 2 days after the killings, a convoy of police vehicles approached the Robinson property on Dresden Street. 14 officers, body armor, rifles ready. They expected resistance, maybe a standoff, maybe a final shootout with men who had nothing left to lose. What they found was Curtis Robinson sitting on his front porch, unarmed, hands resting on his knees, waiting. He had been sitting there since dawn, watching the street, knowing they would come. Curtis Robinson? The lead officer kept his weapon raised. Detroit Police, I need you to stand up slowly and keep your hands where I can see them. Curtis stood. 53 years old, moving like 70. I figured you would be coming. Is anyone else in the house? My sons, my wife, none of them are armed. We are going to need everyone to come outside. Curtis nodded, turned toward the door. Lorraine, boys, time to go. One by one, they emerged. Marcus first, face blank. the expression of a man who had already accepted what was coming. Then Darnell, eyes red. He had not slept since Saturday night. Then Andre, 19 years old, looking somehow younger than he had a week ago, and older at the same time. Lorraine came last. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking at her husband, at her sons, at the life they were leaving behind. Hands up, all of you, down the steps, slowly. They complied. No resistance, no weapons. Just 4 men who had crossed a line and now accepted the consequences. Detective Washington approached Curtis personally, put the handcuffs on himself. 10 men, Curtis. You killed 10 men over a business deal. Curtis looked at his house, at the porch where he had taught his sons to play checkers, at the yard where they had thrown footballs on Sunday afternoons, at everything he was about to lose. It was not a business deal. It was my life, my family's future, everything I had. So you decided to take theirs. Curtis met the detective's eyes. I decided to collect what was owed. Was it worth it? Curtis did not answer. Washington put him in the back of the patrol car. Through the window, Curtis watched Lorraine on the porch. She did not wave, did not call out, did not cry. Just watched, the same way she had watched from the kitchen doorway when he told his sons what they were going to do. Some things you cannot stop. You can only witness. The patrol car pulled away. Curtis Robinson did not look back. Detroit split down the middle. In the days after the arrests, the city became a referendum on justice itself. At Greater Grace Temple on the west side, Reverend Charles Morton delivered a sermon that made the evening news. What these men did was murder. There is no justification, no excuse. They must face the full weight of the law. His congregation said amen. But on the east side, the reaction was different. At barbershops and corner stores and living rooms across the neighborhood, a different conversation was happening. Quieter, more complicated. I am not saying what he did was right, said a man named Theodore Williams, 61 years old, retired auto worker. He stood outside the check-cashing place on Gratiot, 3 doors down from Curtis Robinson's shop. But I understand it. How can you understand killing 10 people? The reporter asked. Theodore took a long drag on his cigarette. You ever work 30 years for a company that threw you away like garbage? Ever watch everything you built get taken by men in suits who never worked a day with their hands? He shook his head. Curtis Robinson did something we all wanted to do. He just had the nerve to actually do it. The Robinson family had supporters, more than the newspapers wanted to admit. Money appeared for their legal defense, anonymous donations, cash in envelopes with no return address, letters arrived at the jail, hundreds of them, some calling Curtis a monster, some calling him a hero, most just asking the same question Theodore Williams had implied. What would you do? What would you do if someone took everything? If the law refused to help? If the system that was supposed to protect you turned its back? The Hollister family demanded maximum punishment, death penalty, no mercy. Raymond Hollister's widow gave an interview to Channel 4. These men are animals. They murdered my husband in cold blood. They deserve to die for what they did. The Robinson family supporters stayed quiet, did not speak to reporters, did not appear on television. But in the East Side, behind closed doors, more than a few people admitted what they could not say publicly. They understood, not approved, not condoned, understood. The code ran deep in these streets. When the system fails, men make their own justice. Sometimes that justice looks like murder, and sometimes murder is the only language anyone will listen to. The trial began in September of 1985. Venue changed to Lansing. No impartial jury possible in Detroit, where everyone had an opinion and nobody could agree. 40 combined counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution had confessions, forensic evidence, eyewitness testimony. A paper trail that connected Curtis Robinson to Raymond Hollister through 8 months of invoices and broken promises. The defense tried everything: extreme emotional disturbance, economic desperation, a lifetime of service to a country and a company that had abandoned him. They brought in economists who testified about the auto collapse, veterans who spoke about what war does to a man, psychologists who explained what happens when someone loses everything. The prosecution destroyed it in closing arguments. Emotional disturbance does not involve 6 days of planning, does not involve reconnaissance and hand signals and military precision. This was not desperation. This was premeditated mass murder. 10 men are dead because Curtis Robinson decided to play God. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 3 days. Guilty. All charges. All defendants. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. Curtis Robinson, life without parole. Marcus Robinson, life without parole. Darnell Robinson, life with possibility of parole after 30 years. Andre Robinson, 40 years with possibility of parole after 25. The judge cited Andre's age as the only mitigating factor. 19 years old, barely a man. Led into darkness by a father he trusted. When given a chance to speak, Curtis said only 11 words. "I did what the law refused to do. I collected a debt." Lorraine sat in the gallery. She did not react when the sentences were read, just closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them and watched her husband being led away in chains. The last time she would see him as a free man. The last time any of them would be free. Curtis Robinson served 17 years at Southern Michigan Correctional Facility. During that time, he worked in the prison library, taught literacy classes to younger inmates, kept to himself. The guards said he was one of the most cooperative prisoners they had ever supervised. Peaceful, respectful. The kind of man you would never believe had killed 10 people in a single night, which always struck them as deeply unsettling. Lorraine visited every Sunday for 14 years, drove 167 miles round trip without fail, rain or snow or the bitter cold of Michigan winters. She never missed a week. They would sit across from each other in the visiting room, sometimes talking, sometimes just holding hands across the table, saying everything that needed to be said without words. In 2001, Lorraine was diagnosed with cancer. By 2002, she was too weak to make the drive. Curtis learned about her decline through letters that came less and less frequently. Then through phone calls, where her voice grew fainter each time. She died on March 15, 2003, 18 years to the day after the killings. The prison chaplain said it was coincidence. Curtis knew better. Lorraine had held on until that date for a reason. A final message, a reminder of the night that had defined and destroyed them both. Curtis was not allowed to attend the funeral. He learned later that she was buried in the dress she had worn to their wedding, that the church had been full, that people had spoken about her strength and her loyalty and her unshakable love for a man the world had called a monster. Curtis Robinson died on November 2, 2004. Heart failure, 62 years old. He passed in the prison infirmary with no family beside him. The chaplain reported his last words. "Tell my boys I am sorry, not for what we did, for what it cost them." He was buried in a small cemetery outside Jackson. Simple marker: Curtis James Robinson, 1932 to 2004. No mention of father, no mention of veteran, no mention of the man who had worked 19 years building engines and 17 years paying for one night of blood. Just 2 dates marking the boundaries of a life that had transformed from ordinary to unthinkable. Marcus Robinson was released in 2019, 34 years behind bars. He returned to Detroit, found a city that had changed beyond recognition. The East Side had been partially rebuilt, new developments where abandoned houses used to stand, coffee shops where check cashing places had been. Marcus got a job as a janitor at a community center on Gratiot Avenue, 3 blocks from where his father's shop used to be. He lives alone in a small apartment, 63 years old now, never married, never had children. In a rare interview with a local newspaper, he said only this: "I was 29 when it happened. I am 63 now. Still do not have answers, just nightmares. Every night for 34 years. Same faces, same sounds. You do not get used to it. You just learn to wake up quieter." Darnell Robinson died in prison in 2011. Heart attack. Same as his father would 3 years later. He was 51 years old. The same age Raymond Hollister had been on the night Darnell helped kill him. The prison officials said it was natural causes. But the men who knew Darnell said he had been dying slowly for years. That something inside him had broken on that March night and never healed. That he had simply stopped wanting to live. Andre Robinson, the youngest, the one who had asked if there was another way. He served 26 years, released in 2011, 45 years old. He had entered prison as a boy and emerged as a middle-aged man with grey in his hair and a tremor in his hands that never went away. He tried to build a life, got a job at an auto parts warehouse, rented a room in a house on the west side, started attending church again, even met a woman named Denise, different from the girl he had known before, but the same name, which felt like either coincidence or cruelty. But he could not escape the faces, could not stop seeing George Keller on his knees in that garage, could not stop hearing the man say he had 3 children, that the youngest was only 6. On the night of March 15, 2014, 29 years to the day, Andre Robinson left his rooming house and did not return. His landlord found a note on the bed. 3 words: "I am sorry." Police searched for 2 weeks, found his car parked near the Detroit River, found his wallet on the seat. Never found Andre. The official report listed him as missing, presumed dead. Those who knew him said he had finally found the only peace available to a man who could not forget what he had done. The only escape from 29 years of nightmares. Raymond Hollister's widow lived until 2017, 83 years old. She never remarried, never left Grosse Pointe. Spent 32 years in the same house where her husband had died. Some said she could not bear to leave. Others said she stayed as a monument, a reminder of what had been taken. Her daughters sold the house 3 months after her death. The new owners renovated everything, tore out the bedroom carpet, repainted the walls, tried to erase what had happened there. But neighbors say the house still feels wrong, that something lingers in the air that no amount of paint can cover. The machine shop on Gratiot Avenue was demolished in 1991. The building had sat empty for 6 years. Nobody wanted it. Too much history, too many ghosts. Today it is a parking lot for a furniture store. Concrete and painted lines where Curtis Robinson once rebuilt alternators and starters, where he once believed hard work and honesty were enough. The house on Dresden Street was sold at auction after Lorraine's death. A young couple bought it, did not know the history, learned later from a neighbor who remembered everything. They moved out within a year, said they could not sleep, said they heard sounds at night, footsteps in the kitchen where 4 men had decided to become killers. The house has changed hands 3 times since then. Nobody stays long. Some places hold on to their history too tightly. Some bloodstains go deeper than the floor. 39 years have passed since that March night. Was Curtis Robinson a murderer? Yes. He killed 10 men with premeditation and precision, transformed his 3 sons into killers, destroyed 10 families, including his own, spent 17 years in prison and died alone in an infirmary bed. Was he a desperate father driven to the edge by a system that abandoned him? Also, yes. He worked 19 years for a company that discarded him, built a business from nothing, trusted men who saw his desperation as opportunity, asked the law for help and received nothing but silence. The uncomfortable truth is that both things can be true at the same time, and that is the most disturbing part of this story. because it forces us to ask questions we would rather avoid. What would we do in his position? How far would we go to protect our families? Does justice exist when the system fails? Is a promise worth 10 lives? Where is the line between defending what is yours and becoming the monster everyone fears? There is no easy answer, no clear moral, no satisfying conclusion that wraps everything up with a bow. Just a simple and terrible truth. Violence breeds more violence. Broken systems create desperate men. And sometimes the distance between a church-going father and a mass murderer is nothing more than one broken promise, one dismissive laugh, one man who looked at another man like he was nothing, and $47,000 that someone refused to pay. If this story made you think about justice and desperation and the price we pay when the system fails, leave your like and share this video. Subscribe to this channel for more true stories that challenge everything we think we know about right and wrong. Comment below. What would you have done in Curtis Robinson's position? Where do you draw the line? Because these stories are not just history. They are happening right now. Somewhere in a forgotten neighborhood. In a city the country has abandoned. Where a man is sitting at his kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills he cannot pay, thinking about the people who stole his future, wondering if anyone would blame him for what he is about to do. Until next time, remember, the monsters we fear are not always born that way. Sometimes they are made. One broken promise at a time, one ignored phone call at a time, one dismissive laugh at a time, until something snaps. And the men who thought they were untouchable learn the hardest lesson of all. Some debts cannot be discharged in bankruptcy court. Some debts can only be paid in blood.